Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 phonics rules that will instantly boost your students' decoding and spelling skills. And I've got some free posters for you, so make sure to watch all the way through to the end. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, it would mean so much to me if you did that. And then also hit the little bell so that you don't miss out on any of the brand new videos that I post about teaching mostly literacy. Okay, so you may already know that phonics is just the relationships between sounds, speech sounds like or ch, and the letters that we use to represent them. Now, our language would be a lot simpler if it was just one speech sound equals one grapheme, letter or combination of letters, but English is not that simple, right? There are certain rules that govern how we spell things. For example, did you know that English words don't end with the letter V? That's why in words like have, for example, the E is at the end, even though it's not acting like a normal silent E, because the word is not have, right? It's just have with the short A, not have. But the purpose of the E in this word is to prevent the word have from ending with the letter V. If you just learned that V ending rule for the first time, I would love for you to comment wow in the comments, just so other people can see that they are not alone. So many adults don't know these rules, and honestly, I was not taught them when I was a student, not even when I was a teacher, and so I didn't learn them until much later in life, but they're very handy and they really can help our students learn to decode and spell words more effectively. Now, there's a lot of phonics rules out there, right? There's a ton of different rules that govern how English words are spelled. And the thing is, we don't need to sit down and have our students memorize these rules. I introduce the rule as something that can help them remember how to decode or even more frequently spell a word. But the reality is that kids just need lots of practice seeing patterns and reading words and spelling words. They need lots of repetition. So it's not about memorizing these rules, like sitting down and having to recite them or anything like that. But these rules are helpful to you as a teacher for explaining why words are spelled the way they are. And for some students, they will remember the rules and it will help them with their spelling. Other kids, it'll just take a lot of repetition and exposure to words. So all of that being said, we are going to go over 3 phonics rules now, and then I'm going to talk about those free posters that I have for you. The first rule we're going to cover is that there are different ways to spell the sound k at the end of a word or syllable. Now, when I introduce this rule to students, I start with what they know, which is being able to hear the k sound at the end of a word. So I might say different words like walk, rock, lake, and ask them what's the last sound in all of those words. And they will say k, and then I will say, guess what? All of these words, in all of these words, the k sound is spelled differently. And then I'll go on to show them the different ways that it can be spelled, right? So first of all, when we're thinking about the k sound, we know that we're going to spell it with the letters CK, like in the word rock, if that k sound comes right after a single short vowel. So just one short vowel. So like in the word rock, for example, we have a single short O, aw. So that's how we know that the k sound is spelled CK. But CK isn't the only way to spell the k sound at the end of a word or syllable. Our next spelling is just the letter K. And we see the k sound spelled at the end of the word with just the letter K when there is a consonant or a vowel team right before it. So if we think about the word whisk, for example, if kids are spelling it, they're going to realize, okay, the last 2 sounds are s, k. And so here we have a consonant, and therefore we're going to spell the k sound at the end with the letter K. Now there's this other scenario where we have a vowel team, right? So for example, in the word leak, we have the K, just the letter K, because there's this vowel team right before it. And so this right here, this tells us that this rule only is really going to make sense to kids after they've learned about vowel teams. Now, I do teach CK as early as kindergarten, first grade as well. It's just that this whole rule and how everything works, again, it's not going to make sense until after kids have learned about vowel teams and silent E. So silent E situations are up next. Okay, so these scenarios are going to cover a lot of cases, right? However, there are going to be other words that none of this applies to. And in that case, typically it's going to be a long vowel word like the word lake or cake or bike. And in this case, the k sound is technically spelled by the letter K, but then there's going to be a silent E after it, right? So we're gonna spell it, we'll just call the word ending K-E, okay? And we use that when none of the other situations apply and there is a long vowel sound that's not spelled with a vowel team, okay? Not with a vowel team. So as you can see, this takes knowledge of vowel teams, it takes knowledge of silent E before kids can really grasp the rule. However, that doesn't mean that we don't talk about this rule beforehand, right? There's a difference between like getting kids to really memorize and recite rules versus just mentioning, oh yeah, I know that the k sound is spelled with CK at the end of this word because there's one short vowel right before it. Like I even say that as early as kindergarten or first grade. So again, we might not teach the whole thing until kids have learned more about long vowels, but that doesn't mean that we can't introduce pieces of it and mention it in passing, right? That can really be helpful to kids when they're learning how to spell these types of words. All right, our next rule has to do with the vowel sounds of Y at the end of a word. And you might already know that Y at the end of a word can spell I, like in cry or fly, and it can also spell E, like in baby or pony or mommy. But why the difference? There is a rule that governs whether Y says I or E. Okay, so the simpler of these two options is actually the long I sound because we see Y saying I at the end of a base word or syllable. So for example, cry, that's one syllable, right? We have the I at the end, but it could also be something like the word skyway. The syllable sky, it's not technically the end of the word, but the Y still says I because it's the end of the syllable. So anyway, I at the end of a base word or syllable, and if it's a one syllable word, it's always gonna have the I sound. And then the other scenario is the long E, right? So we see the Y saying E at the end of an unstressed syllable in a multisyllabic word. So let me explain what that unstressed piece means. Okay, so here's the word baby. It's a 2-syllable word, right? And we know that the syllables are bay and B. So I'm gonna draw a little line to show the syllable division. Now, the rule is that Y at the end of a word, at the end of an unstressed syllable in a multisyllabic word will say E as long as this last syllable is not stressed. And so if you're not familiar with syllable stress, it's just the syllable in a word that gets less emphasis. And the easiest way that I know to figure out where the emphasis is to call the dog. So imagine you have a dog named Baby. You're gonna call it like this, Baby. So you can hear how I say the bay part more loudly. So that means that the stress is on bay, and this is an unstressed syllable, B, okay? And that aligns with the rule, right? Y is going to say E at the end of an unstressed syllable in a multisyllabic word. However, there are a couple of words in which Y is at like the second syllable, it's in the second syllable, and so you might think that it says E, but it actually says I, like in the word reply. So let's dig into why that is. We have to think again about the syllables and which one gets the stress. So in this case, I'm gonna mark the syllable division. It is like this. And again, I'm gonna call the dog. So if I have a dog named Reply, I'm gonna call it like this. Reply, reply, come here. So hopefully you heard that when I said reply, the emphasis is on this syllable. Therefore, it does not follow the rule that Y is going to say E at the end of an unstressed syllable in a multisyllabic word because ply is a stressed syllable. Now, this would be a lot for a first or second grader to remember, even for older kids. I do have a poster for you that's free. I'll show you some other posters that I have for you in just a couple of minutes, but I will introduce this rule and I'll explain it to them, but ultimately what I want them to know is that Y is going to say E or I at the end of a word, and therefore if they're not getting it if they try the letter or the sound I, then they should flip it to E. So they basically just need to know for decoding purposes that they can try I, they can try E, and they have to be flexible that way, right? Because again, I'm not making them sit down and memorize this rule. Like, it's a lot to think about. I might introduce it, maybe like second grade, for example, but it's not something that I expect them to memorize. They just need to be flexible and, you know, of course, have lots of practice spelling and reading words that have Y at the end. All right, so the third rule I want to share with you is that the letter I or O may have a long vowel sound even when it's in a closed syllable if it's followed by two consonants. So there's a lot in there. So let's break that down a little bit. All right, so typically when we have an I in a closed syllable, I know this is a closed syllable, there's only one vowel and it ends in a consonant, the vowel is closed in, the I is gonna say I, it's gonna have its short sound. Or in the word spot, the O is gonna say ah. That's its short sound. So that's the expected sound. These are the expected short vowel sounds of I and O in a closed syllable, okay? But the rule that I'm referring to, it presents an exception. In the rule that I'm referring to, if there's two consonants after the I or O, then it's not gonna be short I, it's going to be I, long I, or O, long O. Okay, so here are two examples. We have the word child and fold. So in child, it's a closed syllable, but there's two consonants after the I, and so the I is saying I, child, right? And then in fold, again, we have two consonants after the O, and so instead of the short O, ah, it's saying O, fold, the long O, right? This is only true for the vowels I and O, and these are often called the closed syllable exceptions. So the ones that are most common are ild as in child or eind as in grind. And then with the O, we have old as in cold. We have ost as in most, and then we have olt as in colt. So those are sometimes called the closed syllable exceptions, but it all comes back to this rule where the letters I or O may say they're long sounds even in a closed syllable if they have two consonants after them. Now you'll notice that I'm saying may. There are a couple of exceptions, like for example, the word wind. Let me write that real quick. So that has the I, it also has two consonants right after it, and yet the I is short, right? There is a version of this word that's wind, but here the I is short, wind. So the rule is that they may say their long sound if there's two consonants after them, even though it's a closed syllable. Okay, so if you're thinking, whoa, this is a lot of information and I really want to better understand it so that I can do a better job teaching, decoding, and spelling to my kids, then I got you covered. I have a course called Master the Rules of English Phonics that you are definitely going to want to check out. You will feel like such an expert and so much more informed when your kids are asking you like, why is this spelled like that? Or why is this pronounced like that? It is just so helpful to have this teacher knowledge. Because again, it's really important for kids to be practicing real words, reading and spelling them, but it's also helpful for you to be able to explain these things to them and just to be informed because you are a teacher of English, right? You're teaching the English language. So check out that course. It's called Master the Rules of English Phonics, but then I also have some free posters for you. So there'll be two links in the caption. There's the course and then there's the free posters. So you actually saw one of these posters, but I have them for a lot of other things. I have like syllable division, there's an alphabet chart. So make sure to not only check out the course, but also grab some free goodies. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful. Before you leave, it would mean so much if you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video.